Today we are taking a closer look at the concept of capabilities. We are going to do so by starting off with an introduction to the concept by Amartya Sen, followed by an extension to the concept by Martin Nussbaum. Afterwards, we are going to follow up by 3 critical perspectives on the concept of capabilities, starting with a general critique by Hartley. After that, we're going to look at the framework from a post-colonial perspective throughout the texts of Kermolian and Sanchez, followed by a feminist perspective from De Jasper and Starverine. Throughout the presentation, we're going to interconnect the literature by looking at current examples. After the presentation and interconnection of the literature, we're going to have a discussion to bring the texts together and summarize what we've learned throughout the presentation. Don't forget to pay attention because there will be a little quiz waiting for you at the end. So let's begin. Amartya Sen was born in 1933 and is an Indian and Bengali economist and philosopher. He's the Harvard Professor for Economics and Philosophy and won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1998 for his work in welfare economics and social choice theory. His research has ranged over development and welfare economics, social choice theory, political economy, gender studies, and many other fields. His theories got practically implemented, for example, in the Human Development Report and the Human Development Index. In October 2020, he got awarded the Peace Prize of the German Book Trade. Overall, his theories are particularly important for international development students, which is why in the following we are going to have a deeper look into Sen's capabilities approach. We're going to start by listening to a short interview of Amartya Sen.
You see, I think there was a kind of contrast which has been present in the development literature for a very long time. There's one side which is saying, well, development is mainly getting the investment climate right and so forth. And the other is the development is mainly concerned with making human beings both more equipped, more free, more really free, not just freedom as permission, but freedom as a real ability to do things that they have reason to value, both individually as well as social beings, in terms of their contribution to the society. And that includes also participation, public discussion, public reasoning, sharing values, sharing concerns, sharing doubts, and sharing resolves and determination.
So let's have a look at what Amartya Sen means by all of that. Sen starts his explanation by talking about the dual role of human beings and the confusion between ends and means. He argues that humans are the primary means of production and at the same time the agents and beneficiaries of progress. When progress is measured purely from an economic perspective, people are only treated as the means for the production. The problem with that is that this concept is not connected to enriching people's lives. Therefore, Sen states that economic growth is not a good indicator to measure life quality. This leads to economic prosperity being only a mean to enriching the lives of people and not being an end in itself. So how do we identify the ends that lead to enriching human lives? This is where the capability approach comes into play. The capability framework drives its ideas from Aristotle, Karl Marx, and Adam Smith. In the framework, human life is seen as a set of doings and beings, which Sen defines as functions such as being well-nourished and having shelters. It's about the state of being or the activity and not about the commodities. A function is the achievement of a person, what is managed to be done or to be. On the other hand, capabilities reflect a person's freedom to choose between different ways of living. Capabilities describe what people are actually able to do and to be. To illustrate the differences, let's think about the example of traveling. Traveling itself would be a function, whereas the real opportunity to travel would be the capability. The distinction between capabilities and functions underlines the importance of having the freedom to choose one kind of a life over another. Therefore, a person's capability represents the effective freedom of an individual to choose between different functioning combinations. Those functions need to be evaluated and the capability to function needs to be assessed. Sen states that in this context, the capability approach can give guidance, particularly in the contrast to other approaches of evaluation, such as the commodity-based approach, which purely focuses on commodities and income as indicators for a good life. On the other hand, also the utility-based system is in contrast to the capability approach. The utility-based system draws its ideas from utilitarianism. This is a philosophical theory that measures individual utility by the maximization of pleasure and happiness. Sen criticizes this approach by saying that measuring fails to reflect people's deprivation of capabilities and tell us how deprived people are actually doing. Those concerns with commodities and means of achievement go even further by taking the concept of primary goods from John Rawls into consideration. Sen states that not every human can use the primary goods in the same way. Therefore, it is important to take capabilities into consideration, which has freedom at the center of thought. Primary goods become means to freedom, whereas capabilities are expressions of freedom. Especially in terms of inequality, class, and gender, there's much more to say about the capability approach, which is going to be discussed further throughout the presentation.
Martha Nussbaum. Martha Nussbaum was born in 1947 in New York City. She is a philosopher and a professor of law and ethics at the University of Chicago. Nussbaum's work on capabilities has often focused on the unequal freedom and opportunities of women, and she has developed a distinct type of feminism, drawing inspiration from the liberal tradition but emphasizing that liberalism entails radical rethinking of gender relations and relations within the family. She is known for the capability approach in the development policy, which she developed together with Amartya Sen. Differentiation to Sen. The central question is whether and to what extent a person has the necessary skills to participate in the vital goods of society and achieve desired goals. Nussbaum is not concerned with the comparative measurement of the quality of life, but with the philosophical foundations of a theory of basic human claims which should be respected and implemented by all governments as the absolute minimum required by human dignity. While Sen focuses on the existing individual freedoms as qualifications and leaves the concrete form to a participatory discourse, Nussbaum is convinced that it is possible to describe universally valid basic values that are necessary to lead a meaningful life based on the analysis of the human life situation. These 10 capabilities are supposed to be general goals that can be further specified by the society in question as it works on the account of fundamental entitlements it wishes to endorse. Life, bodily health, bodily integrity, sense, imagination and thought, emotions, practical reason, affiliation, other species, play, control over one's environment. For Nussbaum, a good life is not guaranteed if even one component of her 10 points is not fulfilled. This does not mean, however, that a fulfilled life is not possible for the disabled, for example. For them and their dignity, a higher level of care is required. Therefore, there are political demands to ensure these points as a minimum standard in society, whether disabled or non-disabled. Although the capability approach sounds attractive, it is criticized by Dean Hartley. Dean Hartley teaches social policy at the London School of Economics. He is interested in people's experiences of poverty, exclusion and welfare, and the ways in which human needs and social rights are socially and ideologically constructed. According to Hartley, the concept itself is constrained. There are three major issues which the individual cannot see and which are seldom discussed within the space of capabilities. First, the constitutive nature of human interdependency. Human society is to be understood as an association of interdependent beings, and yet dependency in late modern society has become problematic. As you can see on the slide, there are two bases which construe the nature of our membership of society and the claims that we have against each other. One is predominantly liberal or also contractarian. The other one is more republican in nature or solidaristic. Hartley actually refers to Dan Laurie and Stewart, who contend the social structures or structures of living together matter, not only because they may enable or constrain our capabilities, but because they are constitutive of our individual identities and the frameworks of meaning by which we value multiple functionings. Social beings cannot wholly be free from others because the terms on which they belong within families, communities, or society will matter as much as the freedom to do or to be. Second, the problematic nature of the public realm. The public sphere is discredited and shrinking, and the other problem is that the personal and the private are not properly connected. To connect the two requires us to rethink the public sphere. This time, Hartley is referring to Nancy Fraser, who criticizes the four assumptions of the liberal ideal. First, it assumes that citizens are constituted as formally free and equal, and that everyone can participate in the public sphere. Fraser's argument is that it is impossible to ignore the effects of systematic inequalities in liberal societies that exclude or compromise the participation of different social classes and groups, including women. Second, it assumes the existence of a single undifferentiated public, which is not the case because society is composed of many publics with competing and overlapping interests. In practice, the interests of powerful elites may be defeating the common interest, while the interests of subordinate groups are ignored. Third, the liberal ideal seeks to distinguish between private concerns and common concerns. Fraser argues that economic and domestic concerns have been regarded as largely private. This has precluded or constrained the debate about the nature of both class and gender oppression. Finally, the liberal ideal sought a separation between state and civil society. Fraser argues that this weakens the effective accountability of the state. Her suggestion would be to have a different ideal for a public sphere, which there would be equal participation and an end to systematic inequalities. Third, the exploitative nature of capitalism. Marx claimed that work defines and constitutes the very basis of humanity's conscious species being and humanity's social. The problem with capitalism, according to Marx, is that it transforms work into alienated labor, detaching human beings not only from the objects of their production, but from the essence of the social humanity. Zen is anxious to defend the principles of free and fair market exchange, but Marx argued that a contract for labor cannot be freely entered so long as one party depends upon the sale of the labor power in order to obtain the means of subsistence. Markets for the exchange of goods and services have long served human ends, but a market economy violates the requirements of justice because individuals under capitalism do not have the access to advantage. Also, in a market economy, necessary and valuable functionings such as caring for children or for disabled relatives, studying, or voluntary work in a community have no marketable value and are not rewarded as work. In this way, capitalism distorts our perception and our experience of work and of our species being, because in a global market, our ability to function as we choose may necessarily be achieved at the expense of others' freedom.
So let's have a look at the capability framework from a post-colonial perspective. In the text of Kmoling and Sanchez, firstly, the positive contributions of the framework are underlined. The poor are conceptualized as those who are experiencing multiple oppression. Poverty is about having no choice, which is capability deprivation. The framework recognizes that people play an active role in their empowerment and encourages the poor to participate. Furthermore, it presents a multidimensional perspective on poverty as capability deprivation. The question then is, does Sen's capability framework really give voice to the poor, and to what extent? This leads us to the aspects that should be seen critically. Firstly, Sen proposes a way for the poor to achieve their well-being in a neoliberal capitalist world. Therefore, he does not critique the neoliberal capitalist system that limits the poor's capabilities and breeds global injustice. Secondly, the concept of capabilities as individual agency is opposed by individualism and privatization, leading to the fact that structural, social, and class concerns are reduced to being private affairs. Thirdly, the concept of imperialism. Sen uses a Western lens when thinking about capabilities by leaning towards universalized cultural elements. That is why people's freedoms become an instrument for the market economy when multicultural perspectives are not supported and recognized. Based on this criticism, Kmoling and Sanchez argue for a post-colonial capability building. This is based on building a human economy instead of accepting the unjust system of market economy. A human economy is defined as a people-centered economy that decentralizes power and structures. Secondly, the framework should be founded on solidarity and economy that encourages participation and community empowerment. Thirdly, the framework has constantly to be reformulated with inclusivity, multi-perspectives, and founded on localized and indigenous knowledge. Reconceiving in a more inclusive and post-colonial perspective, the capability approach could have a transformative potential.
Now, COVID-19 has killed more than 250,000 people, and millions more have been infected from all walks of life. But in countries like the United States, it's those from ethnic minorities and the poorest in society that have been hit the hardest. There's always been inequality, but has the coronavirus exposed just how bad it is? Here's Adam Pletz.
It is the great equalizer. I don't care how smart, how rich, how powerful you think you are.
It's certainly true that anybody and everybody can catch the coronavirus. Politicians, Hollywood stars, and royalty have fallen ill. But it appears COVID-19 is taking a disproportionate toll on many underprivileged groups, among them low-income earners and ethnic minorities. Analysis of data from 38 states in the US shows that Black Americans are more than twice as likely to die than other groups. And many don't feel they're getting the support they need.
We need more help right here with the sanitizing, the Lysol, and we do have Black-owned businesses who are helping, but we need the commissioners to come to the community and really pay attention to us. I feel we're left out.
Diseases nearly always reveal socioeconomic disparity, and the economic crisis that the coronavirus has caused will only compound the effects on the most vulnerable.
Esto, según dicen, que está por el mes de julio. Hasta ese entonces no sé qué hacer. Sobrevivo por las fundaciones que te regalan alimentos.
The coronavirus may have exposed inequality across the US and other countries, but as economies falter and low-income earners are the first to suffer, might it also widen the gap between the haves and have-nots? Adam Plutz, The Newsmakers.
So basically this video is showing that with the pandemic, poverty and inequality are on spotlight. In these times, people are losing their jobs and are unable to find a new job. Schools are closed, people getting sick, and with all the restrictions from the government, the whole situation is a mess. As the video already mentioned, COVID is affecting structural factors which lead to problems like no access to healthcare, not having proper housing, or not being able to work because of people's immigration status. This shows that problems arise from the neoliberal capitalism system that ignores structural issues and focuses on the individual agency. So all these COVID measures could unfairly impact lower income or marginalized communities. Especially in this video, they are talking about different ethnic groups who are differently affected by COVID. But moving forward, we can use the pandemic as a motivation to improve the equity in societies and avoid going back to the pre-pandemic status quo by giving poor people a voice to speak out in the public sphere and by listening to them and finally taking things into action.
Irene van Stouwen is Professor of Ruralist Development Economics at the Institute of Social Studies of Erasmus University of Rotterdam. Her fields of interest are feminist economics, social economics, institutional economics, and post-Keynesian economics. Des Gasper is Professor of Human Development, Development Ethics, and Public Policy at the Institute of Social Studies of Erasmus University Rotterdam. His field of interest are development ethics, public policy analysis, migration, and climate change. Development as freedom and as voters, Gasper and Stouwen focus on to what extent can sense idea and freedom, especially his conceptualization of development as freedom, enrich feminist economics. They also focus on the attractions and providing important opportunities to analyze gender inequalities in sense notion of freedom as the capability to achieve valued ends. At the same time, since recent emphasis on freedom as the dominant value in the judging individual well-being also contains risk, not least for feminist analysis. Gasper and Stouwen characterize the risk as an under-elaboration and overextension of the concept of freedom. They believe that sense idea of freedom have significantly influenced feminist development economics. They identified main shortcomings in the treatment of development as freedom. They noted an overextension of the emphasis on freedom to the extent that all capabilities that women and men could acquire are now to be described as freedom, regardless of their specific content. Some important values, such as those associated with friendship, respect, and care, cannot be adequately understood in terms of individual freedom. They suggest instead a more empathically pluralist characterization of capability, well-being, and value, highlighting the distinct and substantive aspect of freedom, as well as of values beside freedom in the lives of women and men. They illustrate this with reference to women's economic role as caregivers. They focus on commonality between sense work and feminist economics, positive freedom, the capacity to be and do rather than only negative freedom or freedom from interference. They criticized Sen for highly generalized use of freedom that may come at the cost of downplaying some necessary distinctions, including those between freedom and other values. They believe that development may be better described as at least comprising freedom and justice, and more enlighteningly, as involving also the growth and maintenance of the value of caring for others. They illustrate the critique and proposal with reference to the unpaid care economy. They suggest that Sen's focus on freedom provides an important space for the gender-aware evaluation of female and male well-being. They suggest greater use of term capability and less use of the term freedom, which has many other associations, and the adoption of a refined vocabulary distinguishing the different types of capability. Moreover, not all freedom are good, and that it is necessary to distinguish among types of values and to consider how to variously promote them. Freedom has undoubtedly been and remains an important value in the women movement and the feminist theory and analysis. Theory informally accurate exclusive values including attentiveness to the needs of others, acceptance of the responsibility to address these needs even if they do not arise from consequences of our own actions, competence in addressing these needs well, and responsiveness of the care receiver to the caregiver as a feedback into the caring process. Many feminists have struggled for freedom for women, in particular freedom from patriarchy. This includes the freedom of having more options ranging from access to abortion to access to education, the freedom of having better choices in their personal lives, such as freedom from oppression in public as well as private life. This requires a recognition of different capabilities as valuable in their own right, not simply as examples of freedom. Freedom as choice and intentional action instead should be empathically embedded within a fuller picture of other values and needs, the capabilities and functioning of one gender. Another value that is different from freedom is respect. Being respected is a significant factor in an individual's success in growing out of poverty. Respect in turn involves the capabilities of self-esteem and confidence. Self-esteem appears frequently as a vital first step for women to improve their well-being, for example through education or by joining women's NGOs. Women may be free to join a credit program, but without the self-confidence to engage in a business activity, they will not to do it. Friendship appears as another important value, having its own set of skill capabilities. Now let's watch a short video about Iranian women protest against compulsory hijab to get their freedom. It began with a seemingly innocuous event, a woman driving on a mountain road in Iran enjoying the simple freedom of feeling the wind in her hair. It is a freedom most women take for granted, but one that Iranian women have been denied since the Islamic Revolution of 1997. Masih Alinejad, an Iranian journalist, captured this moment in a photograph and 7 years ago posted it on social media. She then encouraged other women to also share their secret moment of freedom. As a result, she was bombarded by pictures from women all over the country. She was the beginning of My Stilty Freedom, a social media movement opposed to the mandatory headscarf.
Here's an image you may have seen, millions have. It looks like surrender, but it's not. Standing on a power box, her headscarf on that stick, is Vida Movahed. She became known as the Girl of Revolution Street, the Tehran road where this happened back in December. Worryingly, she disappeared soon after, arrested.
They arrested Vida because they thought they were going to stop other women to protest against compulsory hijab.
Movahed only took that chance because of an online campaign called My Stealthy Freedom, which urges Iranian women to share photos and stories without a hijab.
My body, my choice!
Journalist activist Masih Alinejad started that campaign.
There are millions of Iranian women, they are tired of having a double life. When we're fighting against compulsory hijab, we're not fighting against a piece of cloth. We are fighting for our dignity. We are fighting for our identity.
That arrest of Movahed last month sparked an outcry. The hashtag #WhereIsShe took off. Finally, over the weekend, a human rights lawyer confirmed she's been released.
Although they're putting themselves in danger, they know that this is a punishable crime. They know that they might face jail, but they're doing this. Why? Because they're tired of compulsory hijab.
Far from being frightened away, look at what's happening now. Inspired by Movahed, the girls, plural, of Revolution Street are all over social media. One, then another, then more, new pictures almost every day. It's not mass street protests, but single displays of defiance, strength, standing on their own power boxes.
Hier ist das erste deutsche Fernsehen mit der Tagesschau.
Der diesjährige Friedenspreis des deutschen Buchhandels geht an den Wirtschaftswissenschaftler und Philosophen Amartya Sen. Die Arbeiten des 86-Jährigen zur Bekämpfung sozialer Ungerechtigkeit seien so relevant wie nie zuvor, hieß es zur Begründung.
Oh, did you guys see that? I was just recently reading an article about Sen's capability approach for university. And the whole time when I was reading that, I was wondering if change can be actualized as long as power structures and the system remain unchallenged. Because Sen wants to achieve change within the neoliberal capitalist system. But I always thought that this system is also responsible for inequalities and limits the capabilities of deprived people. So problems like inequalities and poverty are seen as an individual problem and not as structural issues. I don't know if you guys ever thought about it like that, but social and class concerns, for example, are not taken into consideration. And even though they remain very important issues in analyzing social inequalities. So I do think that it's quite insufficient to speak only about the well-being of individuals. We also need to take the well-being of institutions into consideration. What do you guys think about this?
Well, I think it's very interesting how he wants to fight inequality and get people out of poverty, because we shouldn't forget that we are actually living in a very capitalistic world. And I mean, equality and capitalism don't really go hand in hand, right? We also shouldn't forget that in a market economy, necessary and valuable functionings such as caring for children or for disabled relatives, or even studying or doing voluntary work, have no marketable value and are not really rewarded as work. So yeah, the whole concept is very liberal and individualistic, and yeah, it's just about the individual who is acting centered. And I think that's a problem because people can't really fully, go for what they want or achieve their goals because, yeah, they're actually depending on other people and have to consider them when they want to go for something, and do something and, yeah, choose what they want to do or what they want to be. So, yeah. So, what do you think, Rosa? What's your opinion on that?
During last week, I started an article by Gaspar Stuyvesant, and it was very interesting for me the point of view which had criticized Sen's point of view about capability and freedom, because they looked at the freedom and the capability from feminism point of view, and also the focus that however women require economical freedom to have the power and independency in the society, but they need the other aspects of freedom and capabilities, such as self-confidence and being in the society and participating in different women NGOs and have friendships. And moreover, it's an important factor that women have a significant role as caregivers, and this very important role that they spend their time, energy, and life, and also they spend their emotions, but they never get any income for this spending energy and time. So these are the factors that are very important from the point of view of feminism. And it shows that what women require is not only economical freedom.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that the human should be put at the center of thought. So concepts like solidarity and inclusivity should be taken into consideration.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'm actually agreeing with you. That's, yeah, sounds very interesting. Maybe we should have a deeper look on it.